Allen Company, 47 years young and a proud sponsor, wishes OOIDA all the best as you celebrate 50 years.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
A bill that would prevent a regulation to require speed limiters is now in the U.S. Senate. I'll discuss the bill, the background, and what it all means with Collin Long of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. Every year, dozens of truckers volunteer to haul a replica of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Landline Now's Ashley Blackford spoke with OOIDA member Harry Smith about his experience hauling the wall. And finally, earlier today, news broke that Yellow Freight was filing for bankruptcy. I'll get some history of how we got to this point and a rundown of where we are now from Jamie Jones and Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine. But first, the news with Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Mark. A bill has been introduced in the Senate that would prevent the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration from moving forward with a rule to mandate speed limiters on commercial motor vehicles. Recently, Senator Steve Daines of Montana introduced the Deregulating Restrictions on Interstate Vehicles and 18-Wheelers Act. The bill would prohibit the FMCSA from putting into effect any rule or regulation to mandate speed limiters. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association supports the bill, saying that a speed limiter mandate on heavy-duty trucks would be detrimental to highway safety. A call to action has been sent to OOIDA members nationwide, urging them to contact their senators and tell them to co-sponsor the bill to prevent a speed limiter mandate. To do that, you can visit fightingfortruckers.com. Yellow Corporation has ceased operations as of noon yesterday. Today, the Teamsters Union said it was served legal notice that Yellow Corp is ceasing operations and filing for bankruptcy. Teamsters General President Sean O'Brien was quoted saying that today's news is unfortunate but not surprising. He said Yellow has historically proven that it could not manage itself despite billions of dollars in work concessions and hundreds of millions in bailout funding from the federal government. The press release went on to say that the Teamsters are putting infrastructure in place to help affected members get the assistance they need to find good union jobs through freight and other industries. CVSA released the 2023 International Road Check results today. Nearly 60,000 commercial motor vehicles were inspected in Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. as part of CVSA's 72-hour safety blitz that happened between May 16th through the 18th. 81% of the commercial motor vehicles and 94.5% of the commercial motor vehicle drivers inspected did not have any out-of-service violations and continued en route to safely complete their runs. CVSA's certified inspectors discovered at least one out-of-service violation on 19% of the vehicles inspected, and in turn removed those 11,270 CMVs from the roadways until the out-of-service violations were corrected. There were 17,479 vehicle out-of-service violations in total. Each year, CVSA highlights certain aspects of the roadside inspection. This year, inspectors focused on anti-lock braking systems and cargo securement. There were 2,975 cargo securement violations and 4,127 ABS violations. A total of 949 safety belt violations were issued during this year's International Road Check, meaning 1.6% of CMV drivers inspected were not wearing their safety belt. New laws that cover road safety issues will go into effect tomorrow in Arkansas. One new law revises the state's truck platooning rules. The new law loosens the driver requirement that stated that an active engaged driver will be located in each cab of affected trucks. Now, only the lead truck has to have a driver in the cab. At this time, there are no companies that use platooning in the state. Another law will also see new authority for law enforcement to use traffic cameras to enforce speed limits in certain areas. Specifically, the new law permits the use of speed cameras in work zones. Workers must be present in the area for cameras to be used for enforcement. One more new law covers pedestrians on highways. The new law prohibits pedestrians within the boundaries of controlled access highways. Exceptions along a state highway or street are included for construction personnel, vehicle breakdowns, wrecks, and emergencies. Nevada State Police took a different approach recently to catching people who weren't driving safely. 2 News reports that NSP did a badge-on-board operation last week. 2 state troopers took to the road in a semi-truck where they had a bird's-eye view of motorists. Patrol cars were placed all throughout the freeway where they were able to pull cars over who were breaking the law. Trooper Jim Farley with the Nevada State Police said the main reason for the operation is to prevent accidents with semis as they have more limitations than regular cars.
They have really large blind spots. They don't move as fast as regular cars, and they don't stop as fast. Some of these trucks weigh in excess of 129,000 pounds rolling down the road.
Some of the violations they spotted, including following too closely, speeding, unsafe lane changes, and cell phone usage. World Day Against Trafficking in Persons happened over the weekend. July 30th was the day several organizations, including the U.S. Department of Transportation, raised awareness on preventing human trafficking. A new collaboration among transportation sector leaders was announced. U.S. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg announced the appointment of 15 members of the DOT Advisory Committee on Human Trafficking. Those members include a cross-section of stakeholders from both industry and labor, including representatives from the aviation, bus, law enforcement, maritime, port, rail, and trucking sectors. The committee will develop a report with recommendations for countering human trafficking and an assessment of best practices by transportation stakeholders and human trafficking violations involving commercial motor vehicles. A 3/4 scale replica of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. is continuing its journey throughout the U.S. Every year, truck drivers volunteer to haul the wall to its locations. OOIDA member Harry Smith was one of the volunteers this year.
Well, it was selfish. I wanted to go and have a nice trucking drive from Kalispell to Meridian to see some country I had never seen, and this was the perfect reason to take time off of work and go and do it. But in hindsight, it was just a total honor to be able to help something that I feel like I don't ever want our country to forget. And I know a few Vietnam veterans that have passed away in their old age. And we just have, it's so important to keep the connection.
To hear more from Harry, you can stay tuned for later in our show. To learn more about the wall that heals, you can visit vvmf.org. And finally, we have some sad news to tell you about. Bob Essler passed away over the weekend. He was the secretary on the board of directors for OOIDA. He began driving full-time in 1968. He was elected to the board of directors for OOIDA in 1980, and in 1983 was appointed by the board to the position of association secretary, where he served until his passing on Saturday, July 29th. Bob fulfilled many functions for OOIDA on a volunteer basis, in addition to his regular duties as OOIDA secretary. If the association needed representation somewhere, he was the guy to volunteer. If former trucker and OOIDA president Jim Johnson needed a break from his desk at the OOIDA headquarters in Grain Valley, Missouri, Bob Essler's loaded rig would arrive in the parking lot looking for a co-driver. Bob is survived by his wife, Ruth Tyler. Between them, they have 9 children, many grandchildren, and a couple of great-grandchildren. Visitation will be held on Wednesday, August 2nd, and the funeral Thursday, August 3rd at the Mullner-Nixon Chapel in Wyandotte, Michigan. He will be greatly missed. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Ashley Blackford.
Thanks, Ashley. Next, I'll discuss a bill on speed limiters in the U.S. Senate with Collin Long of OOIDA. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
You trust PrePass for more bypasses? Now let PrePass help with tolls. PrePass toll service means lower cost, one invoice for all tolls, and fewer violations. Created by truckers for truckers. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
Landline Now. Welcome back. A bill that would prevent a regulation to require speed limiters is now in the U.S. Senate. Here to discuss the bill, the background, and what it all means is Collin Long of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office. Collin, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Excited to talk about this.
Yeah, so let's start with the Senate bill. That's the news today. What is it? What would it do?
It's a bill that mirrors the House bill we've been talking about for a number of months now that would essentially, it's pretty straightforward. It would essentially prevent FMCSA from moving forward with their speed limiter mandate proposal on heavy vehicles. And we're super pleased it has been introduced by Senator Daines of Montana and a number of other co-sponsors. We hope to grow that list during the August recess now.
What did the senator say was his reasons for introducing the bill?
Well, Montana is a great example of the types of negative effects a speed limiter mandate would have. If you remember, the state took a closer look at what type of impact speed differentials have on rural two-lane highways and found they actually needed to increase truck speed to bring basically all vehicles closer together to a uniform speed, because they knew it would improve highway safety. This isn't new information. States have slowly been moving towards a more harmonized speed between vehicles because they know it reduces crash rates. So Montana started moving in that direction as well. And I think the senator understood that if he stood by and allowed FMCSA to advance the speed limiter mandate, it would wipe away that decision that the state made because they felt it was best to promote highway safety within their borders. And unfortunately, Montana's not the only state where that would happen. If FMCSA went as low as 60 miles per hour for a heavy vehicle speed limiter mandate, it would create speed differentials in, I believe, 47 states across the country. So that's taking things in the exact wrong direction when most states are moving away from speed differentials.
Well, let's get some background here for folks that maybe aren't aware. This all is because of something we're expecting from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. Essentially, what has the FMCSA said is in the book, or on the way, I should say?
Well, they're not even entirely sure, if I'm being honest. I wish I could give you a solid answer, but they're still debating about what speed they would choose for a mandate for all heavy vehicles. And when I say all heavy vehicles, they're talking about going as low as 10,000 pounds. So it's not necessarily what most people think in Washington is your traditional tractor trailer. It's going to go far beyond that. But forget the weight. They can't even decide on what type of speed they want. They're debating 60, 65, 68. There are other industry groups here in D.C. saying, well, why don't you go to 70 if folks have all these other types of equipment installed and utilized on their trucks? So there's a lot of confusion about where the agency will actually settle when they come out with a rule. But a lot of the safety advocacy groups have been pushing for 60, which we think is just absurd, if I'm being honest. It kind of ignores the fact that there are states across the country where passenger vehicles are allowed to go as fast as 80 miles an hour. So if you set every truck speed limit at 60 miles an hour, right off the bat, you're creating a 20 mile per hour difference between cars and trucks, because we know cars are going to continue to go as fast as they possibly can on highways, and there's going to be greater pressure on truckers to go maximum speed. So it's creating the speed differential that research has time and time again illustrated will create higher vehicle interaction rates. It's a very specific term that we use to talk about this issue here in Washington. And when you start creating higher vehicle interaction rates, guess what happens? Crash rates tend to go up. So we look at this and we're saying, here's a rule from an agency who's responsible for promoting highway safety, putting forward a mandate that we know will increase crash rates. And it's kind of mind-boggling to us. Maybe they'll go with 65, maybe they'll go with 68, and some of the opposition will deteriorate, but there's still going to be pretty strong opposition to this proposal, no matter what speed they settle on amongst the driver community, because drivers have made it crystal clear to us and to the agency that they don't want to drive speed-limited trucks.
Well, with all that being said, and with the research being what it is, do we know why FMCSA has chosen to undertake this rulemaking?
Well, they keep pointing to this notion that if we reduce the speed of heavy vehicles, if there's a crash, severity will decrease. And we're not really arguing that point. I mean, I think it would be kind of silly for us to argue that point. But in focusing so much on reducing crash severity, they're losing the bigger picture that the mandate will ultimately lead to higher crash rates. And I think one thing we've been specifically pointing out in Washington, D.C. is what types of crashes are most likely to increase with a speed limiter mandate. And we keep saying it's going to be passenger vehicles crashing into the rear ends of trucks, which happen to be some of the most severe accidents a passenger vehicle occupant can face. So we don't even necessarily think crash severity will be introduced if you're increasing some of the most severe crashes on the highways. So, you know, we can take this apart in many different ways, but for an agency, like I said, responsible for promoting safety, it's a big risk to start introducing speed differentials as high as 20 miles an hour. And if we're being honest, probably more, because I guarantee you there are folks in Texas driving a little faster than that 80 mile per hour speed limit across the state.
I suspect there are people that can give us eyewitness reports of that.
Correct. I shouldn't laugh. I mean, it's dangerous. It's hazardous driving. But creating those speed differentials is also dangerous, and it's also hazardous. And we have ample data and analysis to back up that notion. I mean, folks in the federal government and elsewhere have been studying the effects of speed differentials for decades. And time again, they come to this conclusion, well, if you start tinkering with speed differentials and increasing speed differentials, you're going to see crash rates go up. So we think that right there should be a disqualifier for this mandate. But unfortunately, FMCSA has the support of safety advocacy groups, of some large carriers who want to slow down their smaller competitors, and it's given them enough oomph to move forward with a rulemaking. And they've been very clear they intend to impose a mandate, which is why we are pursuing these bills on Capitol Hill to stop them from going forward, because it's our last resort.
I wonder if you can talk a little bit about the House version of this bill. Who's behind that, and what was their reasoning for introducing it there?
Yeah, it's a guy by the name of Burkeen from Oklahoma, Congressman Burkeen. His interest is because he knows what type of impact it will have on his state, where speed limits are pretty high for passenger vehicles. We're slowly gathering support for that. I think we now have over 20 co-sponsors. Most importantly, we're getting co-sponsors from the House Transportation Committee, folks who play an integral role in developing highway policy here in Washington are starting to pick up on the fact that this is a backwards approach to promoting safety, and all it's going to do is lead to higher crash rates, which was something we're seeing go up and up and up every year. And unfortunately, we have an agency who's pursuing policies that are going to continue that upward slide. So we want more co-sponsors. I think that's where truck drivers need to come in and get involved and start talking to their lawmakers and saying, hey, you got to get on these bills in the House and the Senate, because it's really the last chance to stop the agency from moving forward on its own authority with a speed limiter mandate. So we're going to spend August recess talking to elected officials in both the House and the Senate to get them to try to get them to support these now companion bills that have been introduced.
Something else that you brought up earlier is you said that the speed limiter mandate would wipe away the state decision in Montana. That's something Representative Burkeen has talked about, is the issue of states having, the ability to set these speed limits. Can you talk a little bit about his reasoning there?
Yeah, I mean, back in the 90s, Congress gave states the ability to set maximum speeds on highways in their state. I mean, that makes perfect sense, because not every state highway is designed the same. The conditions are different. So certainly there would be a need to have different maximum speeds. But since then, I mean, I've talked about states moving away from speed differentials, but it's just an indication that the states are figuring out what works best for them. And having a federal government agency come in and say, we understand that you folks may be trying to figure out what promotes safety on your highways, your unique highways, but we know better. And this universal nationwide speed limit for heavy vehicles from 10,000 pounds up is what we're going to tell you has to be the way you move forward. And it's kind of counter to what Congress did back in the 90s when they gave the states the latitude to go about creating their own speed limits. So we think there's actually a states' right issue here. And that's actually resonating with a lot of Republican lawmakers in the House, if I'm being honest, because they understand the need to ensure that states still have the authority to set these speeds, because it's what Congress allowed them to do a couple decades ago. So why reverse it, especially when states are clearly making steps towards improving highway safety by normalizing, or harmonizing, I should say, speeds between cars and trucks. That's the trend more recently, not moving to create greater speed differentials. It's reducing speed differentials. So when the agency comes out with a policy, like I said, we'll create speed differentials in 47 or 48 states, a lot of folks on the state level should be concerned about that.
I want to talk a little bit about the fact that we have bills in the House and Senate now, something that you've referred to as a companion bill.
Yep.
A bill has to be approved by both the House and the Senate, even if it's introduced in only one. So why is it important to have a companion bill? What purpose does that serve?
It shows that there's support for whatever you're pursuing, in this case an end to the speed limiter rulemaking, amongst lawmakers in both chambers. It's proving that if a bill passes one, there's interest in the other chamber to get it done as well. I think it really bolsters your argument either for or against whatever policy you're discussing. In this case, I think it really bolsters our argument to prevent FMCSA from moving forward with this speed limiter mandate. And we always hope to have bipartisan bills introduced. These bills aren't quite bipartisan yet, but there's still a lot of work for us to do to bring some Democrats on board. And that's when these companion bills really start heating up, because the margins are so narrow in both chambers that it really requires bipartisan support to get some of these things done in both chambers. And that's what we hope to eventually have. But right now, just having a Senate companion to the House bill is a major step forward for us. Having 5 Republican co-sponsors on board, including some in Republican leadership in the Senate, is a big step for us. And now we can talk about the fact in the House, hey, the Senate has taken action. They've introduced legislation. So it should be much more comfortable for you to get on board this House bill. And I think hopefully we see that transpire in August when we start talking to a lot of these lawmakers in the House, and we remind them, hey, there's very, very good legislators in the Senate who are behind this effort as well. So it should make it easier for you to get on board. And more specifically, I mean, well, I was gonna give a very specific state example, but I don't want to paint myself into a corner. But if there's a senator supporting this bill from a specific state and a House member isn't on board the House bill yet, this gives us good momentum to say, see, your senator understands this is going to be a major problem within your state, and we think you should get on board. And that's certainly a line we're going to be using when we meet with lawmakers in both chambers throughout the remainder of August. All right, August hasn't even started, throughout the month of August.
Okay. Well, Collin, thank you very much for all the information. We certainly appreciate it.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
I've been talking with Collin Long of OOIDA's Washington, D.C. office about a bill introduced in the United States Senate that would stop any proposed regulation to require speed limiters in trucks. And folks, as Collin mentioned, it's important for you to make your voice heard on this issue by calling your representative and especially in this case, your U.S. senators. To call any member of Congress, all you have to do is dial the U.S. Capitol switchboard. Provide the operator your zip code and they can connect you directly to the office of both of your U.S. senators and your U.S. congressmen. That phone number is 202-224-3121. We'll be back in just a moment with more of the program. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Firestone tires are for more of everything. More miles for every tire dollar, and more confidence in your fleet. At Firestone, we help fleets save with dependable value. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off Truckstop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Landline Now, welcome back. The Wall That Heals is continuing its tour around the country. The mobile memorial honors the nearly 8 million Americans who served in the U.S. Armed Forces during the Vietnam War. OOIDA member Harry Smith recently had the honor of transporting the wall. He joins me now. Harry, can you talk to me more about your recent trip with the wall and why you wanted to volunteer to haul it?
So I live in Salt Lake City. I wanted to see somewhere I hadn't seen before, which is hilarious because what better way to do it than Kenworth with a one-of-a-kind traveling wall that thousands of people are counting on. So I took the leg from Kalispell, Montana to Meridian, Idaho, and I was able to travel over the flight of the Nez Perce Indians, their Exodus Trail, which goes up and over Lolo Pass in Montana, which has 99 miles of curvy roads. And I didn't believe it till at mile 40, I had to stop and take a nap because I was so tired from the relentless concentration that I was providing to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. Yeah, and I'm not 100% sure how our involvement began, but I'm 95% positive it started. The connection was made through OOIDA and the networking on behalf of my dad's part that he was able to volunteer to haul the wall a couple years ago, and then they were able to, some other driver's truck broke down that was going to do it, so they called on us for a quick response to get the wall transported to its next location, and we were able to accommodate that and make it happen. It's a volunteer thing, so to do it is you got to give up 3 or 4 days of good trucking because they're not moving the wall in the wintertime when work is slow.
What was the experience like hauling the wall?
So it was ironic because I chose a path to haul right from Kalispell, Montana to Meridian, and I took basically the worst roads possible. So it was all 2-lane road, so nobody could really see the trailer. I had maybe a handful of people that were able to pass me on the short sections of, multi-lane highway, and everybody honks and waves at you and gives you a thumbs up. So there was very little of that. And my trip took way longer than I thought, so I did half the trip in the dark. So most of it was just me, no one recognizing what I was hauling, which is kind of a bummer because you love it when you can share the joy of the wall with other people. This leg that I didn't really provide that. I rolled into Meridian at around 3 a.m. the day of the parade, the convoy, and so the thing I loved the most was sharing the wall with other truckers on the road, but unfortunately that it almost got zero exposure because of the terrain it went across, and then the way my travel schedule lined up, I spent all day in the daylight getting from Kalispell to, Ridgely, Idaho, and then Ridgely, Idaho, it gets dark when I do the final 4 hours of driving down into Meridian. So hauling the wall was uneventful, not the experience I had set myself up for, but then, and I don't know if you have other questions about the actual convoy of delivering the wall, the final 25 miles. So the bulk of the work was transporting the wall from Kalispell to Meridian. And, but then the payoff is when you get to do the convoy with the, are they called the Honor Guard? The motorcycle guys, the Harley-Davidson guys. But they're not just Harleys. They got everything. Yamahas, Hondas. It's all the biker gang guys. And you meet up. So, our parade is scheduled to leave at 11 a.m. sharp. 10:45 a.m. we have, so throughout the course of the morning, motorcycles are showing up. Feels like hundreds of motorcycles. I think we ended up with around 150 riders. And so throughout the course of the morning, they're all showing up and, checking the wall out. It's just in the trailer, so you can't see anything, but the trailer has a nice graphics of what the wall is. And so then we have a little pre-convoy meeting at 10:45. The chaplain offers a blessing and, prays for our safety as we travel the final distance. And So this was all really cool, and I was loving it and, having fun. And then as we began the convoy and I'm being escorted by law enforcement and, 75 motorcycles in front of me and 75 motorcyclists behind me, we pulled out onto the highway that I take to get to Meridian, and it goes through a bunch of small towns, and the small towns are just lined with people, town after town.
For those who haven't seen the wall, can you kind of describe what it looks like?
If you're looking at the trailer, it looks like a NASCAR race trailer with as far as the wall that heals the traveling wall, looks like a NASCAR race trailer, but with a nice vinyl wrap on it, showing the wall in Washington, D.C. It's got a picture of, what you assume is a Vietnam veteran, resting his arm and head up against the wall, I'm sure at the names of one of his buddies. And then the actual wall itself that is deployed upon arrival, it is a 2/3 scale replica. I think it's probably made of plywood with really nice vinyl overlays. And it stretches several hundred feet in two directions, I'm guessing to mimic what the layout of the wall in D.C. is like.
Mm-hmm.
And then they also carry around the Gold Star motorcycle, like an old school motorcycle, Vietnam era motorcycle that the Gold Star mothers of Gold Stars donated, and that travels around with the wall as well. And then the trailer has some deployable awnings, when they flip out those awnings on both sides of the trailer, and then encased in the sides of the trailer is a, if you will, a museum display, artifacts with data plaques inside of a glass case with Vietnam War memorial stuff, boots of a trooper, letters from their wives, that kind of thing is displayed on the sides of the trailer. So there's the rolling display has museum, it has a motorcycle display, and then it has the actual wall that gets deployed and set up by the team of experts, and they're led by a guy named Tim Tett, and he's just an angel. He's a saint, an angel or a saint, I'm not sure, or both. But he's the leader. There's hundreds of people that make this happen. Mm-hmm. Volunteers from all over the country taking time off of work to volunteer to come and set the wall up and stay with the wall for a week and then take it down. And I just couldn't believe that people could do that.
Mm-hmm. Why was it important for you to participate in this and be part of it?
Well, it was selfish. I wanted to go and have a nice trucking drive from Kalispell to Meridian to see some country I had never seen, and this was the perfect reason to take time off of work and go and do it. But in hindsight, it was just a total honor to be able to help something that I feel like I don't ever want our country to forget. Mm-hmm. And I know a few Vietnam veterans that have passed away in their old age, and we just have. It's so important to keep the connection of what our veterans did, and understand that they were doing essentially what they were forced to do, not what they wanted to do. Mm-hmm. And they did it anyway. And a lot of them didn't come home, around 52,000. So, and I knew moving the wall would be cool. And so when I say, for selfish reasons, I wanted to go and have a great experience for myself. And I did, but I felt so small after seeing how much other people contributed. Because, I show up with a big truck and I think, yeah, I'm pretty cool. Like, I got this big truck and can move this huge wall. I can take it, 500 miles in 2 days. That's awesome. But my contribution was minuscule compared to what people in the organization do, in the foundation. The motorcycle guys that organized all of that and executed that, all the law enforcement guys, the people that flew in from all over the country to donate their time to set up the wall, be the tour guide for the wall for the week, and then to take it down and ship it to the next city. I just was like, I was thanking them. I thought the people would be like, oh, thank you. And, people were, but I was the one, going around with wet eyes and just saying, hey, thank you so much. I don't deserve to be here. I don't know why I'm here, but sure glad to be here.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything you'd like to add?
The people running the foundation, their spot is safe in heaven, obviously. Because they could do anything with the skills that they have to execute and carry out what we did. They could be running a huge company, making a ton of money. Mm-hmm. And so I just am just so thankful for their leadership, and their mission is to help our country remain the way it is and the way we want it to be, with regards to understanding what our veterans went through and helping them have, the ones that were able to come home, helping them have great lives here. And those guys and that Tim Tetz and the staff around him, my hat is off to them, and can't say enough good about them. The people at Sensi that volunteered their campus for the wall to be set up, that needs to be recognized. They had an incredible campus and probably one of the most ideal setups for the wall to be set up on. It was incredible. It was beautiful, perfectly landscaped, tons of staff there to help. The welcoming party to their campus, I was just I just couldn't believe it.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like an incredible experience, for sure.
It was awesome. Mm-hmm. I wish more people got to do it, but I'm a bit of a spoiled little, trucker, and hey guys, I'm taking off 4 days, and I know it's our busiest time of the year, but you'll live. Yeah. But I'm going. Yeah. So, yeah. But and I can do that. Most of our industry can't do that. Mm-hmm. So I just feel really lucky, feel really blessed that I could go and do that.
And other truckers hearing your story, may encourage them to look into it and want to do it as well. So you never know.
Yeah.
What was it like to witness other people seeing the wall for the first time?
Just the people that surround you with that wall. Mm. It's people that get it. It's the backbone of America. It's the people that make this country what it is. Mm-hmm. And when you have that wall behind your Kenworth, that's just who it attracts. That's who magnates to it. And it's just the greatest. As just where you knew that when you had that wall behind your truck, that you would only have the best people coming up to you and saying, that is so cool. What is that? What is this? Tell me what you're doing. And so all of that. So that was amazing.
That was Harry Smith talking about his experience hauling the wall that heals. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
For can't miss accuracy, weigh your truck on a CAT scale.
When you weigh on a CAT scale, you get a no excuses guarantee. You can now save time weighing by using your smartphone. Find out more at weightmytruck.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. Earlier today, news broke that Yellow Freight was filing for bankruptcy. It's a significant development for a company and for trucking overall. Here to offer some history of how we got to this point and where we are now are Jamie Jones and Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine. Jamie, Tyson, thanks for joining me.
Hey, you're welcome,
thanks
Mark.
for having me.
Let's start kind of broadly here. How did Yellow's trouble start? I mean, how far back does this go?
We can probably go back just before the pandemic, around 2019, 2018. They had problems with making contributions to their healthcare fund, which is something that we would see more recently. But that goes back just before the pandemic. And then they got bailed out for the most part. So there was a COVID relief funds for more than $700 million. That's what they were bailed out of back in 2020. Which the government would find that they didn't deserve in the first place. So that, so that would cause a lot of problems. But even before the pandemic, they were struggling, which kind of raised some questions like, why did they get that $700 million loan when it was known before then that they were struggling? So they've been struggling since before the pandemic. So this isn't not exactly startling news for people who've been following
Bad
Yellow.
news, but not startling.
Right,
yes.
right.
Well, something that confused me throughout this whole thing is the fact that they were acquiring other carriers during this time. I mean, I know New Penn, Holland. How much did that play into all this?
Well, and, really, the latest troubles is what Tyson's talking about, starting up pre-pandemic. So, I mean, we're talking about a 99-year-old motor carrier, Yellow, okay? And roughly 40 years ago, we had deregulation kick in. And all of a sudden, you had these non-union trucking companies starting up. And it was very simple in the truckload sector for that to happen. But in the less than truckload, where Yellow was a dominant player, they did start having these non-union trucking companies creep in. And they were undercutting rates. That kind of thing started happening back 40 years ago. So when you saw the New Penns, the Hollands, and all of those mergers and acquisitions, those were LTL companies banding together to survive, basically, is what it amounted to, just reducing the competition on the union shop side. Again, this is not at all an anti-union thing. This is just the reality that these non-union companies were going in and cutting rates. And so we saw the LTL sector shrink down to where you had Yellow, Roadway, and Consolidated Freightways, the big three. Yellow and Roadway still had to, they merged. We saw CF go out of business in 2002. So, I mean, it was a shrinking sector to that point, and it had to do with competition during deregulation.
Well, on top of all that, Yellow was having financial problems, even beyond the ones we've discussed already, experiencing losses on their quarterly reports. Mm-hmm. I mean, how much of a role did that play in all this?
Yeah, that's obviously a very significant role there. So very recently, they've been trying to restructure with their plan called the One Yellow plan. And as a matter of fact, that plan kind of went wayside, and they blamed the Teamsters for it. In fact, they sued the Teamsters recently, back in June, basically trying to claim that the Teamsters were blocking the One Yellow restructuring. That restructuring was for more than $1 billion of debt. They were trying to restructure more than $1 billion in debt. And so they tried to do something about it. And again, they tried to blame the Teamsters for it. Of course, the Teamsters wouldn't have it. And so, yeah, I mean, that was a significant part of it right there.
Well, we also have news reports going back as far as February that their tonnage was off, that we had a couple of reports over the past year to that effect. And that seems to me like that was also a sign that things were starting to go south.
It really was. And when we talk about the size of them, last year they only accounted for 7% of all LTL freight. So while we build it up in our minds, and I think a lot of us, because we've covered Yellow for so long, there's this misconception that they were the dominant player in the field, and it really wasn't. That's so watered down anymore with the competition that they didn't account for as much freight, so tonnage was coming down, and they were losing customers again because of competition over rates. And we all know right now, I mean, we're not in the R word yet, but it is recessionary. The feel is out there right now. Rates are down and everything, and when you are saddled with as much debt as Yellow is, you don't have that wiggle room on rates that, a healthy financially healthy company, I'll spit it out here in a minute, they can play with their rates more and survive these recessionary times.
You talked a little bit about that COVID-19 bailout loan, and something that I think is kind of significant here is why did they get that in the first place, and why now are people saying that they shouldn't be having it?
So, yeah, it's kind of a complicated answer there, but I'll try to simplify it. They got it under a provision over the relief fund, basically claiming that Yellow was significant to national security. That the business that they do with the Department of Defense was significant to national security. But from the get-go, the Congressional Oversight Commission that oversees all the funding going from the fund, they question that. They question how essential Yellow was to national security. And in the final report, they actually came out with the decision that it was essentially they were not essential to national security, as the relief fund claims. And so that's basically where we are now. Is that basically what that report says is that they did not deserve that money, and that's kind of where they left it off at.
The union has made concessions over time trying to help Yellow out. At what point did they signal that they were done making concessions and that they were through with that process?
Sean O'Brien made that crystal clear. Wow.
Right. I mean, yeah, very recently. So, again, the latest trouble that Yellow was in was not contributing about $50 million into the healthcare and pension fund. And basically, yeah, Sean O'Brien made it clear. It's like, if you don't figure this one out, we're striking. And they made that very clear. Fortunately, the healthcare company, they made a concession saying, all right, we'll give you an extension till the end of the month. You guys got till, July, or actually I think it was more than that. I think it was 4 weeks or something to that effect. So Yellow had some time to make those contributions to the fund, but they just recently filed for bankruptcy, so that's kind of neither here nor there. But yeah, the Teamsters said right then and there, it's like, if you don't figure this out, we will strike, and that was pretty much it.
So it really all comes down now to what does the bankruptcy look like? That the devil's going to be in the details for what the livelihoods of these 30,000 plus employees, and 22,000 are represented by their truck drivers and dock workers, represented by the Teamsters. And I mean, that's a lot of people whose lives are hanging in the balance right now, because those pensions, are they completely lost? Are they going to be paid out at a percentage? We don't know. I mean, bankruptcy is going to sort this mess out. But, the sad reality is there's a capacity issue in trucking right now. We have an overage of trucks. Even with Yellow shutting down with that many trucks and truck drivers and everything, we're probably not going to see a big bump in rates. It's just a lot's going to shake out over the next, few days when that bankruptcy filing hits and we see what the reaction is. But Yellow had already lost a significant amount of customers, so we're not going to see freight move around much more.
Yeah, in fact, they had a lot of their customers drop them just in the last couple of weeks here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That strike pretty much sent some shockwaves across the industry. And, yeah, a lot of the customers of Yellow jumped ship after that threat was there.
Okay. Well, that's all the time we have. I want to thank you both for coming up and kind of clearing this up for folks out there.
Oh, you're welcome, Mark.
I've been talking with Jamie Jones and Tyson Fisher of Landline Magazine about some history behind the news today that Yellow Freight has filed for bankruptcy. Our program is produced by the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association, the only national organization representing the interest of professional truckers in Washington, D.C., and state legislatures, and with the regulatory agencies that deal with transportation and highway safety. If you're not a member yet, call our main number during business hours to join today. The number is 816-229-5791. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome, and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us.
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.